And that is Ben Zeitlin's Beasts of the Southern Wild. Okay, just kind of carrying on the theme. I fucking love the music to this movie so goddamn much. Like, this is probably, I mean, it's up there. The Green Hornet. Holy shit! Really? That's just funny because we'll get there. We'll get there. It's funny you mentioned that though. But what was I gonna say? Yeah, Beast of the Southern Wild. I mean, the music. Just first, I really just want to talk about just how incredible the score is here. And I don't want to get copyright strike, so I'm not going to play it. But if you just want to, you don't even need to see the movie. Like the song, the music is so fucking like whimsical, and it kind of reminds me of Beirut and Arcade Fire a little bit. It kind of has a Baroque quality. But it's like what if John Williams was in Arcade Fire? Let's put it that way. That's the music. you know I was gonna say that's an interesting choice. But we'll get there in a minute. But yeah, I mean that's just the music, right? And I can go on forever about the music. Just watch the goddamn trailer, just to get a little taste of how fantastic that is. Just watch the trailer for this movie, and it's my number 5 movie of all time because this is a movie um that's about a little girl who is facing the end of the world, whether it be literal or metaphorical. If she feels like the world is ending, and she's just a kid, she's just a little 5-year old kid, and it's essentially a fairy tale. It's to the point where, like, the more that I've seen it, the more that I pick up, like, on these little details, like the place where this story takes place, the main location takes place on somebody's, like, property, and that property is belongs to the main characters of these movies. So the size of the property would imply that these people are wealthy, but as we see them, they live in complete poverty. And this movie takes place in just outside of New Orleans in post Katrina, um, in a place that got flooded, obviously, and got completely destroyed. And it's about just sort of this like small band of outcasts who created this little town for themselves that lives and operates and kind of looks like this. As you can see, they live on the water. They've embraced the fact that they're flooded and all that. That's, first of all, that's the thing. When I say it's a fairy tale, I mean it's a fairy tale. Like, this is the kingdom. This is Hush Puppy. This is Hush Puppy's kingdom. And when we're watching this movie, you're essentially following this main character who essentially functions like a princess, who we are told is gonna be the queen of this land, or and all that shit, and she has to live up to her father. And her father is a very, very haranguey, imperfect person. And probably one of the most violently imperfect characters ever put to screen. And yet, like, you sympathize for this guy. Like, once you know the whole story, of course. Early on, he's horrifying. Like, early on, he's like throwing crap at his kid while everything around them is literally on fire. It's a wild movie. It is a wild movie, by the way. It's one of those things where it's like, of course it had to be an independent movie. If you tried to do this on the studio, you wouldn't be able to. It would be illegal. But yeah, I guess to really get into why this movie is like one of my top 5, is not only does this movie just really feel like it transports you somewhere. That feeling throughout the film is challenged in a very meaningful and interesting way. This is a story about a girl who expects the world to end, who thinks the world is going to end in front of her, and we explore her dealing with that, the reality of that, and what it means for her world, specifically the world of a little kid, of a tiny little kid. Like, what does the end of the world mean to them? What does it represent? Is it the literal world, or is it just the world around them? And also, how do you cope? The final shot of this movie is one of the most bittersweet, like, absolutely devastating, while also like pumping your fist up in the air. Like, it leaves you with so much uncertainty, but without a sense of dread. despite the fact that it has a very sad ending. And it's and you know, considering the fairy tale nature of it, you know, what the movie kind of says about life, the greater feeling of life, and honestly, you know, especially watching it in the modern context when the world is physically dying. You know, global warming is killing so many things, and you know, when you think about the enormity of that, what are we if not 5-year-old kids in comparison, in relation to that? You know, that sense of helplessness of not being able to do, like, I can't fucking keep the ice caps from melting. You know, I can't do that, and neither can her. But the thing is, a little kid expects you to. You know, so when you're an adult and you don't have anyone to expect that from, you just kind of have to eat it a little bit. And how this movie explores that through the lens of a little kid is, I mean, first of all, I don't want to sell this movie like it's a bummer, because it's not. Like, this is one of the most uplifting films that I've ever seen. Like, the first like 10 minutes of this movie is just like perfect cinema. Like just like the most astounding, like, opening few minutes. And you guys are gonna see I'm a sucker for like a fantastic first act. But this movie's like opening sequence is just electrifying. It just instantly captures the imagination, and so much of it is the music, right? But it's also like the imagery and the fact that, you know, as you guys can probably tell, maybe some of your serious movie nerds, that ain't no 35 millimeter film, Graham. This movie was shot on 16. And it kind of gives this movie this eternal quality, right? This movie would not have worked if you would have shot it on digital, because digital looks too modern. The fact that this movie was shot on 16 gives it this sort of timeless quality, and it makes it feel like this is an ancient fairy tale. It makes it feel like this is a fairy tale that we've all been telling each other in some way or another. And frankly, we have, like, we've been telling this story in some way or another since the beginning of time. It's just yeah. It was yeah, it does feel like a fever dream. It totally does. But yeah, and God, what was I saying before that? Jeez, I kind of totally lost my train of thought there. I'm sorry, you guys, but no, okay, yeah. The opening 10 minutes, like, so much of it is the music. A lot of it is the editing, but also just some of the imagery, just some of the shit this movie puts to screen. Just really needs to be seen to be believed. And as an independent filmmaker, as like a low budget, self funding ass filmmaker, it is inspiring. It is inspiring what these people were able to do with such limited resources. It really is something everyone else is. Yes, yeah, perfect, Mikey. Yes, thank you so much for saying that. Yeah, and that's what this movie feels like, man. This movie definitely feels like you're unearthing something ancient, because the truths that this movie explores, and again, and it's truth that is so the enormity, the complexity of these truths that the movie explores are made very palatable, because you are seeing it through the lens of a child. But you're seeing it through the lens of a child, and this movie makes you feel like a helpless little kid, you know. But just like a helpless little kid can rely on his mom and dad to hug him and make him feel all better, this movie asks us to find that within ourselves, you know. um yeah, and that's what I love about this one. This is I love, I love movies, if you guys can't tell, that are kind of optimistic, but that really put you through the ringer. And this movie is totally that. This movie leaves you with a beautifully ambiguous state, but in a beautifully ambiguous place. But like, and it's not the happiest. It's very bittersweet, but it earns its sweetness, and you really feel like you yourself deserve some of that happiness, because it does ask a lot of you emotionally when you watch it. And I don't mean that in some like Lars von Trier, like horrible things are happening in very direct and blunt ways. No, this isn't that movie. This is a fairy tale. This is an absolute fairy tale, and it's a modern one. And you know, it's a shame. It's a shame this is a forgotten movie. This movie, uh, Lindsay. Yeah. But what was I saying? God, yeah, this movie's just magic, man. It's just absolute magic. And like, God, I really cannot. Like I said, okay, that's what I was trying to say. It's a bummer that so many people forgot this movie existed. It was nominated for Best Picture, the 2013 Oscars. I saw this movie in theaters opening weekend, and I remember it was for my birthday. I saw it for my birthday, and so I was there, and it was like, okay, cool. So like, it's an indie movie. And it looks like a cool one. It has cool music, but I remember when the movie was over, I was not expecting just how much that ending was gonna hit me. I was not expecting how like just it just swept over me, dude. Like just completely washed over me in the way that only an incredibly fantastically well made movie can. So if you haven't seen Beast of the Southern Wild, if you see none of the movies if you don't watch anything, or you've already seen all the movies that I mentioned, and you haven't seen Beast of the Southern Wild, go watch it. Seriously, it's amazing. You'll thank me later. My sister's a professor in New Orleans. I took a tour in those swamps. I got to see this. It's heartbreaking, the damage. Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like it is heartbreaking, the damage. But one of the central metaphors of this movie is that they take that damage and build something with it. But I'll let you guys explore that with the movie. So, Beast of the fucking Southern Wild. God, like just talking about it makes me want to go pop it back on. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. That might actually happen a lot for these next ones. So uh from going to super, Beast of the Southern Wild is an incredibly low budget independent movie that manages to do a lot with very little. But for this next one, we're kind of going in the opposite direction here.